welcome to Family Lifestyles. I'm Julia Wilson, Edmonson County Extension Agent for Family and Consumer Sciences, and I have with me Janey Cline, Hart County Extension Agent for Family and Consumer Sciences.
Good
morning. Janey, you have it smelling amazing in here, so what do you have?
Oh, I have some herbs. We have some basil, and that's what's really putting off the aroma this morning. If you've dealt with herbs very much, you know that in the mornings the herbs have more fragrance.
Okay.
And more aroma and that type thing. So when I picked it up this morning, I actually purchased that this morning, and I was like, oh, my car smells so good.
Oh, I bet it
love
does.
herbs and that type thing. But we're going to talk a little bit about herbs, because I think a lot of times people are a little bit afraid of herbs. They like them, but they don't know how to use them. And so we're going to do a couple recipes with herbs and just kind of talk about the difference in, say, fresh herbs versus dried herbs.
Okay.
One of the big key components to the difference in the fresh and the dried is that the dried is more concentrated, and it's something you're going to purchase, more than likely. Now, we did some food preservation segments before where we've talked about drying herbs and drying, various fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. So you can dry herbs and preserve them for a long time. I think maybe you mentioned that you had some left from last year.
Yes, I had a basil plant last year that was just got huge, and so we dried some of those leaves, and we've just stored them over the winter in a nice jar. And when we need herb for basil for a recipe, we take it out, we grind up the leaf, and we're ready to go.
Right. Yeah, so that is very convenient. And you said you did the whole leaf?
Yes, we dried the whole leaf.
Okay, yeah, so you could use it in different forms,
yes.
maybe, So, yeah, that sounds delicious. But a lot of people don't think about the ways that you can use, like, the fresh herbs when you go out. And, I have a garden that's just right outside. I say a garden. I have a container garden right outside my door. And I did that on purpose this year because I didn't use herbs that much before. And I was like, if I have those convenient, I think I'll use them more. Well, it has worked because, like, for instance, last week I was eating a hamburger and I went out and I had some dill and some basil. And I got that and put it on my hamburger, and it just added that. It just put it over the top to me.
And it was right there, convenient at your door.
Right, exactly. Where I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have gone and gotten it if it had been out in another garden or something, And that's the good thing about herbs is that you can grow those in small pots and that type thing. And a lot of them, there are annuals and there are perennials, and they are different in, if they can grow year round. I know you can put, a lot of times I'll get me a basil plant like right at the end of the season or something. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they'll have them at the grocery store and that type thing. Put it in my window and, keep it most of the winter, actually. So, it doesn't get as large. You were talking about out in the garden, it got
big,
huge. Yes. You're not going to get it much bigger than the one I have right here, and that's probably a little bit on the bigger side of what I have over the winter. But it's enough to kind of give you some fresh, a fresh taste and a fresh feeling when you're, eating different foods or whatever. So, and also, as we were speaking about the aroma, it really gives a good aroma in your kitchen. It just makes me want to, makes me want to cook and makes me want to eat and everything, because I just think it adds so much. One of the things that people do most with basil is pesto.
Okay, pesto.
Yeah, and I love the pesto because it's really simple. It's just like about 4 ingredients. You can grind your basil up and then put it in with some nuts, and some olive oil and that type thing. Stir it up, and you have you have pesto that you can keep for a pretty good while in the refrigerator. So, and there's so many recipes you can use for that. So you just have to be creative and think about it. I was speaking about doing the dill and the pesto on my hamburger, but I've also gotten to where I'm using egg salad sandwiches. I'm putting the dill in the egg salad sandwiches.
I bet that makes it taste really different too.
It does. And a lot of people are afraid of the dill. My daughter, actually, she loves herbs and does a lot of things, but she doesn't like dill pickles. And she was like, so I don't know, I won't like dill. Well, I was doing a plated up recipe and I had a little dill left over, and I said, why don't you try this? Well, she has a big plant now and puts it in everything because it doesn't really taste like, the dill pickles that we think. The dill pickles are more concentrated,
yes,
where the dill is just kind of a fresh, just a little hint of dill in your recipes and that type thing. So anyway, but, get creative. That is what is so important about using the herbs and that type thing. We have a lot of information at the Extension office on cooking with herbs and that type thing. I have this curriculum right here. It's called Cook Together, Eat Together. And that is a great curriculum that we're going to start promoting at our Extension offices and stuff. It's where families cook together, and so call your local Extension office because they may be offering that at some point. But anyway, in that curriculum, it has a chart, and it will tell you, like, say, for instance, a bay leaf, and it tells what the flavor is. It tells the produce that, like mushrooms and potatoes and tomatoes is something it goes well with. It has, like a protein, if it's beans, beef, chicken, lentils, or shellfish, bay leaf goes well with that. It talks about use it in foods that require slow cooking, soups, stews, marinades, and sauces, and it pairs well with oregano, parsley, thyme. So, it just kind of gives you a really good breakdown of what you can use each one of those herbs for, and it's actually 2 pages. So
I think that's what people struggle with. They don't know what herb to use with what, and that looks like a great chart to have handy to know, well, this is what I can use with this.
Yeah, and you could put this up in your, like in your in your cabinet, if maybe you just put that on the back of the door or something like that. Maybe if you laminated it or stuck it in like a... one of those sleeves, sheet protectors or something like that, and put it up in your kitchen, that would be awesome. So just contact your Extension office, and if they're like, I'm not sure what she's talking about, tell them it's in the Cook Together, Eat Together curriculum.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you, Janey.
Yeah. So, but the main thing about herbs that I really want to leave with you in this segment is you just really need to try, Maybe you don't like it, but, at least you tried it. You never know what you'll like and what you won't like, Chives is another thing. I have garlic chives. They've come out with a lot of things that are different, like garlic chives. I've got some barbecue sage.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, they're so different. So just be sure to visit your local, like your greenhouses and that kind of thing, and farmers markets and that type thing, and just see what's out there. And, I'm sure they won't care if you just reach down and get a leaf and just kind of taste it. But then keep in mind when you do that it's going to kind of probably taste different when you pair it up with, like I was saying, with these different foods and that type
It's
thing.
going to taste different, if it's maybe fresh or maybe it's cooked a little. And then it paired, with chicken versus steak, it's going to taste different. Right. But you're right. We just need to try them because just like your daughter, we may discover that we really like something that we had never tried before.
Exactly. I mean, we tell our children to do that all the time, but, we're kind of leery of doing that. Well, I just haven't liked that.
And herbs can also be a great way to kind of maybe lessen that sodium and that salt intake.
Exactly. And that's one of the main reasons that I like using the herbs. As I get older, my taste palette, it takes a lot more for me to taste it. So, the herbs kind of add that extra punch, and so that cuts down on the salt because I'm wanting some kind of flavor out of that food. So something that has a really good flavor like the basil or whatever. I think I'm really promoting the basil, but there's a lot of other herbs that you can do. So,
thank you, Janey. So you've given us a lot of great information. You've really encouraged us to try something new, and we will be back shortly, and you're going to show us a great recipe. So
yes, we're going to do a plated up recipe.
All right, thank you, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Best. You can be the King Kong banging on your chest. You can beat the world, you can beat the war. You could talk to God, go banging on his door. You can throw your hands up, you can beat the clock. You can move a mountain, you can break rocks. You can be a master, don't wait for luck. Dedicate yourself and you can find yourself. Standing in the Hall of Fame. us. Yeah, yeah. Be believers, be leaders, be astronauts, be champions. Standing in the Hall of Fame.
Hello and welcome back to Family Lifestyles. I'm Julia Wilson and I have with me Janey Cline, and we've been talking about some delicious herbs and how we should just try them to see what we would like. And I think you're going to do a great recipe for us now.
Yes, I have a plated up recipe, tomato basil salad.
And I've not tried that one, so I'm excited.
Actually, I haven't either, I don't think. I can't recall if I did. But it does smell delicious, the basil does, and it has such great color because, you know, you have your yellow bell pepper and your tomatoes that's kind of got the red in there, and we want to eat the rainbow, you know.
And that looks like a rainbow.
Yes, it does. It looks just like a rainbow. And it's also a recipe that is really good to make in the kitchen with your children. As I was saying, you know, our cook together, eat together curriculum, you know, that promotes families cooking together and that kind of thing. This really would be something that they could do because it's just chopping.
Yes.
That's all it is. And also, these are ingredients that most people are going to have in their gardens this summer. So
easy recipe just to go out and get before dinner and make it up.
Right, exactly. And it's so fresh, so fresh. But we're going to start out by chopping our basil and talking about how to harvest our basil. This is actually basil that I purchased at the local grocery store in just a little container or whatever. And as you can see, it's just pretty much a whole little sprig.
Yeah, it's a whole stem.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm going to pinch the leaves off of here, and then I'm going to cut it up here in a minute. But, you know, if I was harvesting my fresh basil, what would I do, Julia?
Just pinch off the leaf, just like so. And then you just harvest individually. You don't want to harvest too much because if you harvest too much, then that might impact the growth of the plant. And it says you also can just kind of pinch off that top if you want to as well.
Right.
But again, leaving plenty for more growth.
Exactly.
And so just pinch off what you need and just let it keep on growing to make more.
Right. And if you'll notice, you know, basil wilts pretty quick.
Yeah.
So you're probably just going to want to use, you know, just pinch off just enough.
Because it doesn't store very long in the refrigerator.
Right, it doesn't. It doesn't. So, and to me, I had rather use this versus using this. You know, I don't know. For some reason, it just doesn't feel as fresh. But anyway, to cut basil, if you want it cut in strips, you can just simply roll the leaf. And then you're going to use your knife and just kind of, you know, cut it like that. And you'll have it in strips where that you would, you know, if you had a recipe that you kind of just wanted to see it, you know, or whatever. But then after you've cut it in your strips, you know, you could go back and just actually chop it. Now, I didn't bring a chef's knife, but man, that would have been handy
that
if
would
I
have
had
been, yes.
that here, because that would have been so much easier to cut.
Now, they also make, I've seen scissors before that have kind of several blades where they chop herbs.
Yes,
I
actually have some of those at the office, and I love those things because they really do chop your herbs and stuff up really well. But so I'm just going to quickly cut this up and try to keep my fingers back here because it's kind of really hard with this little bitty small stuff. But anyway, that's probably about enough basil for our recipe. Oh, it smells so good. So you just want to start this recipe with your 1/4 of a cup of basil leaves, and we'll throw those in. And like I said, you just simply chop those. And then we have a pint of cherry or grape tomatoes, and we've cut those in half prior to coming today. And then we have 1 large cucumber, which equals about 2 cups. And you can make that as small as you want. If you have some children that, I'm just not real sure about cucumbers, you can cut them smaller. They tend to eat it better.
If it's smaller and they don't see it.
Yeah, they don't see it. Actually, I have to do that to my husband sometimes. But anyway, and then we have 3 green onions. And I've just cut those up. And once again, if that's something you want to hide in there, you can cut them up smaller. I just kind of like chunks because I don't know, I just like that.
So this is a recipe you could really kind of personalize. If you want smaller pieces, put smaller pieces. Maybe if you want a little more basil, you can kind of adjust it a little bit for your taste.
Yeah, you can. And then we have a yellow pepper, and we'll throw that in there. And it's just a small yellow pepper, and we seeded it and diced it. And then we have 3 tablespoons of feta cheese, and that's not very much, but it's going to give that flavor, you know. I think something else you could actually do with instead of the feta cheese, if you're not a feta cheese person, if you're a blue cheese person.
And substitute the blue cheese instead.
I think that would really work. So we've got 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And I use the extra virgin, but, you know, you can, if you're not that keen on that, you could use the other. And we have 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. Now, you could also use white balsamic vinegar. And then I like to use the fresh ground pepper.
It gives a different taste.
It does. It has a different taste. I just like I don't know. I just really like the bigger chunks of it. I feel like I can taste it better. And then some salt. And, you know, you don't have to use a lot of salt if you're on a low sodium diet. Actually, you wouldn't have to use any, I don't think, if you didn't want to. But you can just toss that up. And look how pretty that is.
It looks like the rainbow.
It does. It looks just like the rainbow. It looks so appetizing. And then with all the flavors mixed together, it also smells so good. And then when you are preparing dishes like this for your family, a lot of times we'll just stick them in a bowl, you know, and we don't think about presentation, you know, but presentation is a lot. So a lot of times if you'll just simply put a placemat underneath and then put it in a white bowl, I mean, the clear bowl works really well too because you can see the colors, but also the white bowl looks pretty. And so we can just pour that in there. I would chill it for a little bit if you have the time. If you don't, you could go on and eat it, but I think chilling it would make it actually even better.
And it does look really pretty there. And, you know, it's true. We eat with our eyes first.
We do.
And so if your kids come in and they see that it's in this nice bowl on these placemats, you know, it looks good. And so they're at least going to try it.
Right.
Especially if they've helped grow the vegetables in it and they've helped chop them up. They're more likely to try it.
Right. They're invested in it.
My little girl's the same way. She was so excited. She helped us get the garden ready. She helped plant the squash. And she helped pick them, and she is so excited to try them because she's been invested the whole way through.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right. You know, we kind of do eat with our eyes, and that looks much different than just putting it in a bowl and having it on the counter and self-serve, you know.
Right.
Maybe take that time to set the table a little bit to make it look a little more exciting.
Yes. And that's something else we talk about in the Cook Together, Eat Together program is, you know, just the whole thing of it's not just cooking, you know. Family conversation is so important. So, you know, sitting down at the table and eating it, you know, and they see you eating this and they'll really like it. So anyway, but I think we're going to talk about a pizza in a few minutes.
Oh, a pizza.
And using those herbs on that pizza.
I bet that gives that pizza a really different taste. Well, thank you, Janey. This looks great. I'm so excited to see what you have planned for us next. And so thank you all very much, and we will be back in just a moment.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be just like Cal Ripken. It's definitely humbling to know that now people are calling me a hero. Instead of finding the IED with my metal detector, the IED found me first, and that resulted in double above-knee amputations. It's hard to describe the feeling of meeting somebody that you've always wanted to be like. There are people now that are looking up to you for their inspiration and to be their role model.
Visit saluteheroes.org to learn more.
Hello and welcome back to Family Lifestyles. I'm Julia Wilson and I have with me Janey Cline. And Janey, you've been teaching us all about herbs and using fresh herbs and experimenting and trying stuff. So you just showed us one great recipe. I think you're getting ready to show us another. Is that right?
Yes, we just did a plated up recipe, and we have so many of the plated up recipes at the office, and they are research based, they are proven, they are awesome. But this one right here is kind of my little thing, you know.
Okay.
I walk into those make your own pizzas, you know, those shops that have the make your own pizzas, and I'm like, oh, what do I do, you know? And we often just go straight for the, okay, give me a cheese pizza, give me a sausage pizza, give me a pepperoni pizza. You know, we just go with the old time, you know, what we've always eaten. But why don't we get adventurous, you know? We talked about the color of the rainbow. Let's make our pizza the color of the rainbow, okay?
All right.
Because it gives it so much more flavor. It gives it so much more just appealing. You know, we talked about eating with our eyes. So this is the same thing with the pizza. And when we talk about eating with our eyes, we also eat with our nose, you know? And the smell of those herbs, you know?
It smells delicious in here.
Right. And they have all those different kind of herbs at the pizza places. But we also have them at home, you know? So one of my favorite things to do is I start out with this is just a pre-made crust. You know, you could make your own crust. There's a million ways you can make your own crust, but, you know, they have the package deals that you can just, you know, stir the water in and make your own crust. Or, you know, you can actually do the yeast and the whole thing, you know. But today I'm just going to do a pre-made crust. And I like to start out with just a little bit of olive oil. And the reason I do that is because it kind of crisps up the crust. Yes, it kind of gives it just a little bit of a crispy flavor. So I asked them to put me on just you know, kind of rub on just a little bit of that olive oil on there. And then that's kind of my base. You know, a lot of people think, oh, I have to put the tomato you know, sauce on there. And, you know, that has to be my first thing. But it doesn't. You know, you can just get creative. And then I'll usually walk down the line, and I'll start in with some vegetables. You know, I don't actually even do the meats. I a lot of times just do just the cheese as my protein. But anyways, I'll start out with maybe a few tomatoes.
So you do tomatoes before you do your sauce? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I was saying. You know, I have them put my tomatoes on there, and then I will have them put on maybe some green onions, or, you know, they usually have the purple onion that you could use either one. Today I'm just going to kind of maybe throw me some green onions on there that are kind of chopped up. And like I said, this is something you can just go to your garden. And, you know, I aim to bring a little bit of the yellow pepper and put on there, or red pepper, or green pepper, or something like that. So, but, you know, just all the different kind of vegetables. You could put mushrooms on there. Just any kind of vegetable that you think, oh, yeah, let's try
it.
Yeah, but just make it colorful, make it pretty. And then, you know, you're going to move on down to your cheeses. And this right here is just your traditional mozzarella cheese, okay? So I have them put a little of my mozzarella cheese on there. This is the feta cheese. I also like blue cheese on it because it gives it a lot of flavor. And then after I get all of that on there, I will move down to my herbs. And you're like, herbs on a pizza?
But I bet it gives it great flavor.
It does. It does. It just really adds flavor. Actually, I have some more broccoli, too, I had forgotten about. This actually came out of my garden at home, and I just kind of throw a little of that on there. But then I have all these herbs, like I was saying. I have some garlic chives. I have just some regular chives. And if you're doing this at home, you're going to just cut those up. You know, you don't have to cut them up real small, but you're going to cut them up. And then you're going to kind of throw those on there. And then, whoops, I don't think we want the whole thing there, but just kind of cut those up real good. And then maybe some parsley. You know, you could put some of that on. Just whatever herb that you have in your garden that you really like. I have some sage here. I have some oregano. I have some thyme. And then I have my basil. You know, I really like this basil. But and then you just put all that on your pizza. And then you're like, but you don't have any tomato sauce on there. You put that in there in dollops is the way I fix my pizza. So you just put just a little dollop here and a little dollop there. And it gives that taste. But you don't have it all over the bottom of it, you know. So anyway, but just look how colorful that is.
It's very colorful.
Yeah. And then, you know, if you really just like pepper, you could put some pepper on there as well. and then maybe a little bit of salt if you would like to do that. So I wouldn't put much, though, because you have all that flavor of your herbs and that kind of thing. And so, you're going to want to really taste that. And you're like, I don't know about that. Just please try it. Because, like we've talked about, you never know until you
try it.
Until you've tried it.
This looks like something that'd be great to do with kids. Have the pre-made crust just to make it a little more convenient, and then just have a whole roll of stuff and tell them, make your pizza, but not in the way you usually would. And they will probably get a little creative.
Right, they will. And like if you just offer them the vegetables, if you put the meat out there, and it's okay to have meat. I'm not saying don't have meat, but I'm just saying, if you put vegetables out there and you put the herbs out there, they're going to be more likely to try it.
Yeah, especially if they've been involved, and again, in growing it and maybe going out and harvesting it.
Yeah.
And they've been involved, they're more excited to try this. Maybe even grow a pizza garden. I've seen people do that before. They encourage their kids to try it by let's have a pizza garden.
Yeah.
They grow their tomatoes and all their spices and everything. And then you could even get a little more advanced, and you can make homemade mozzarella. You can buy it's a few little things you need. It's very quick and simple. Kids love to do homemade cheese.
Yeah.
And so really get them involved in making that, and they're much more likely to try it.
Right. That is the whole key to getting children to eat well, is getting them involved. If you just put that in front of them, they're not as likely to try something as they are as if they have been a part of the preparation like we were talking about.
So that looks awesome. That's a great idea. I think I may try this with my family tonight.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of recipes that we do have, plate up recipes, do call for some sort of herb measurement. Usually it's a dried herb, though, because, they know that's what most people have on hand, especially for recipes that aren't featuring one. So say it calls for a dried, but I only have fresh, or I want to use my fresh instead. How do I convert that? Do I use the same amount, or do I use less? What do I do?
No, your dried herbs are more concentrated, so you're going to use a third of the amount, or you're going to use 3 times the amount of fresh as you do dry.
So very simple math. If it called for a tablespoon of fresh or a tablespoon of dried, I'd use a third fresh. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
So just divide it by 3. Well, that's simple enough. And we can do that with any recipe, correct?
Yes, you can. And one thing you might also want to think about with the dried versus the fresh is that sometimes the dried needs to be put in earlier, quicker into the recipe because it is dried. So, like those juices and stuff like that needs to absorb in it to, kind of rehydrate it.
Okay.
Like where, you're fresh, you're probably going to throw in at the very end. So.
All right, then. Well, you've given us some great tips today, and I'm excited to go home and try some of these because we have herbs out in our garden. I've not got quite to using them all this season, but I'm very excited, and I hope our audience out there will be excited to try maybe something new this week.
Yeah.
So if you have questions about using fresh herbs or cooking with herbs, please contact your local cooperative extension office, and thank you, Janey, for joining us.
I want to say real quick, we're supposed to bake that pizza. I forgot to tell you.
We got to bake the pizza, yes.
Yeah, we don't have the ability to do that here, but I want to make sure that they know you need to bake that pizza.
Yes. Well, thank you, Janey, again for coming today, and I look forward to the next time you join us. So thank you again for joining us. We hope to see you next week.